we ready? We are here. We're live. And hey, thank you guys for joining us today. I know I said I was going to do this every day, but you want to know what? Life gets a little busy, and I am not at a financial point where I can take off work that often. So we've moved this down to once a week. And today I have the absolute honor of having Rod with me here in the studio. Rod, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Nick. I appreciate you having me here.
So we've known each other for a little while.
We have 5, 6 years, something like that.
And I have been very much told I am not allowed to use a certain word when I address him anymore. And when he asked me to do that, it was like my brain went into you know that loading screen you get? Like I'm processing. Okay, I got it. So I got to know, like, is there ever going to come back a title that's going to come in front of that, like Dr. Rod? Or
at this point, it's just expert. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't need a title. Titles aren't necessary. I figure my reputation will precede me, so I'm not worried about a title.
Nice. So since, again, I've known you for 5 to 6 years, the audience does not know you. So go ahead, give us a little just rundown about who you are, and then we're going to go up into some different conversations.
Awesome. So I'm Rod Query. I am the CEO and Chief Human Resources Officer for a fractional human resources consulting firm that I started called the RQ Group. It's the phonetic spelling of my initials, RQ, Rod Query. That's where that comes from. And all that really means is that I go in and I work with companies, with their leadership, with their teams to actually help them take culture and their core values. I say this all the time. I go into businesses and I take the core values off the walls and I embed them into the fabric of the business. Nice. So what the owners are saying, what the businesses are saying, this is what we believe. I want to make sure that's happening on a day-to-day basis. So I get the opportunity to go in and work with companies that maybe cannot afford a full-time human resources person. And that's a big, scary word for a lot of people, right? But it's literally working with people. I really kind of have said that I have become a people strategist and a culture expert working with teams like that, going in, reading the room and seeing what is actually happening and making sure that it all matches up.
It's funny because HR is a scary word, right? Like if you're an employee and you work for a large corporation, they go, you need to go talk to HR. It's like, I don't even know what I did wrong. Like, it's just, you immediately assume it's something bad. Why is that?
HR really has a negative connotation, just like you said. And I have worked probably the last 20 to 25 years in some type of a human resources role. That may not have been my title, but I've worked in that aspect. And I have worked myself into a place to say, I want my office not to be the scary place. Literally, if you're only coming to see me when there's a problem, that's the problem. And what has happened traditionally in businesses, corporations, nonprofits, doesn't matter what kind of genre you're coming from, is HR has always been seen as the bad guy. They're the drop the hammer guy. And that's not what it's really about. It really should be about healthy organizations and people thriving and people working well together. So I would go in, I would position myself in staff meetings, and I would watch the room and see what was going on. And because I can read people really well and I can read the room, I would look out and I'd go, I need to touch base with Nick after this meeting. And I would call him into my office and I would go, okay, what's going on? And they'd go, what are you talking about? So,
right.
No, you're not in trouble. There's but something's happening. And they're like, no, everything's great. Why did you say that? And I said, well, I'm watching you. I'm reading you. What's going on? And then people would just go, and they would tell me their stories. They would tell me what's going on. That's what I'm trying to create with businesses. Because if HR is always seen as a negative connotation, nobody ever wants to come in there, right?
Correct.
They think they're coming in to be written up. They're getting ready to be walked out, whatever the situation is. And I've tried my entire career to change that, where I'm building morale. I'm building healthy organizations. I'm building a place where people feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel understood. And that's where I think HR has to go to not just the nuts and bolts of compliance, legal, write-ups, things like that.
Well, it's interesting you say it that way, because that's exactly what every other department is taught. Yes, or in marketing. Yes, there's the analytics and the the dots, and the kind of cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure that all the data is flowing correctly. But then there's the human aspect of it, right? You got to love your team well,
Right.
or it's not going to grow.
Right.
Right. And I think I would say this is more of a leadership issue, because what you're talking about is shifting a culture dynamic. Hey, no, actually, our HR is a lot of fun. They're the ones that are making sure that we have all the different things. So one, if you need life insurance, we have life insurance, right? If you're going through something, we have something for that. But then two, they're also planning events. So that way we keep a good culture, a good, healthy culture. But then three, you want to know what? There's compliance, and it's boring.
Right.
But every division within a company has that balance of boring.
Well, I worked years ago bivocationally. I was working at a church, and I was working for a financial institution. Did that for about 7.5 years. Midway through the time frame, my boss asked me to move from Iowa, where we were living at the time, to Bedford, Texas, Fort Worth area. And they put me into a first mortgage fulfillment center. And I thought, oh, great. It's a big promotion. They moved our family, all this kind of stuff. 4 days into this event, I called my boss and did what I call career suicide. I said to her, why in the world did you put me here? I know about second mortgages. I know about lines of credit. I don't know anything about first mortgages. And she stopped me and she said, Rod, here's the deal. I can teach you first mortgage, but I can't teach you how to build the morale and get the retention and get the productivity up. That's what you have shown over the last several years. And she says, but I probably should tell you something. Now, granted, I'm 4 days in. I've already relocated my family from another state. And I find out you have inherited the worst producing site for our company nationwide. And I remember sitting there on the phone thinking, what have I gotten myself into? We had 18% customer satisfaction ratings nationwide. We were closing first mortgage loans at about 41 days, when the national average at that time was 21 to 22 days. It was horrible. She said, I need you to change the culture. I need you to change the environment. I began working with the team. It was a really weird environment. We had a sales team of about, probably 15 different sales offices across the DFW Metroplex. There wasn't a day that went by that I wasn't cussed out, that I was told how horrible our site is and everything. It was just horrible. And I began to go to work. So I sat down with every team member. At that time, I had about 30 team members. Didn't ask them anything about their job. I talked to them about their family, talked to them about their grandkids who played soccer on the weekends, just got to know the people. And then I called up one of the sales guys, and I know this is kind of a long story, but the whole purpose of this is I called him up and I said, do you want to change the environment? Do you want your loans closed quicker, and do you want more cooperation? And he's like, absolutely. And I said, okay, I have a solution for you. Told him the solution. He hung up on me. I called him back, and I said, this is what you will do to change this environment. And he proceeded to cuss me out, and I hung up on him. We did this back and forth until finally he called me up and said, whatever you want me to do. Okay, I'll do it. So he comes in that week, does the things I asked him to do. I didn't tell anybody. Didn't tell my boss. I didn't tell my team. Just these people showed up to, support you. Literally, the next week he called me up and he said, what happened? Because everything has changed. We're getting cooperation. We've never had this before. Long story short, other sales offices now are hearing about it. They're calling up going, hey, can I come and do what he did? Well, it's more than just that. There's a lot to this.
Right.
18 months of doing this, we went from the least producing site in America to the number one producing site. We went from 18% customer sat to 92% customer sat. We closed loans from 41 days down to 20 days. And this was pre the mortgage crisis. Mm-hmm. And it all had to do with changing the culture, changing the morale, hearing people, seeing them, and understanding them where they were, because immediately retention went through the roof and productivity went through the roof.
Okay, so let me just make sure I get this right. Here's what you're going to do. No, click. Ring, ring. No, click. Ring, ring. By the number 8, okay, I'll do it. How did you go from getting hung up on to I'll do it? Like what, like, was this over the course of like 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours?
This was over the course of about 30 minutes. Now, here, I'll give you the secret because it's silly. Okay.
Okay.
So some people think that, you have to, in order to change your culture, you have to do this massive thing. Here's what I told him. I want you and your team to come into our offices on Friday, and I want you to bring breakfast, and I want you to serve our team. It had nothing to do with mortgages. It had nothing to do with sales. It was, you're going to serve them. And he told me in so many words, I will never do that.
So hold on. Let me just get this correct. You told him, I'm going to nick-a-phrase this. Hey, I need you to go get breakfast burritos and bring it to the office, and don't just leave it in the break room. I want you to make each person a burrito and take it to them. Now, and I'm adding a nick to this. Did you say, and have a 5-minute conversation? Was there anything like that? Or was it just, hey, serve them. Hey, great morning. Here's a breakfast burrito. Hope you crush it today.
It was simply, I'm going to come in. I'm bringing you something. Thank you for your work, and out the door. No conversations. And these are people that they knew. He shows up. He does this.
Okay.
Within a week, there was a change.
Wait, he brought breakfast every day?
No, one day.
One day.
One day on a Friday. The following Friday, he calls me up and says, what happened? Because all that week, my team's coming to me going, why did they bring us breakfast? What are they doing? How come they showed up? And I'm like, oh, they just came in. I wasn't tipping my hand. I wasn't saying anything. Mm-hmm. Here's the second part.
Okay. There is a 3-part series to this.
2 weeks later, he called me up and he said, things are going good. And I said, well, there is a part 2. I didn't tell you about this, but here's what I need you to do. Okay. And he said, whatever you want me to do.
Oh,
okay. Now we've changed because he's seen something. And I said, at our next staff meeting, I need you to show up and I need you to apologize to my team for how you and your team have treated them over the last several years. And he said, done. He showed up. And I kid you not, we are in a professional environment. He begins to tear up and cry. My team starts tearing up to cry. And they were like, there was this massive breakthrough. Now, again, I didn't tell my team what I had told them. I didn't tell my boss. I didn't do any of that stuff. But when all of a sudden his loans started closing quicker, all the other sales guys are seeing this. And they're calling me up and going, when can I bring breakfast? Corporate started seeing it. And corporate calls me, hey, can you train our other fulfillment centers? Because we're not sure what's going on. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Well, all of a sudden your retention is there. You're closing loans. Your productivity's showing up. Your customer sat scores are through the roof. And we are not seeing that anywhere. And so I ended up training all of the fulfillment centers throughout the United States for this organization. And literally I would say to them, this is what I did. I literally sat on the floor and talk to the people that do the work on a day-to-day basis. We hired them for a reason. We knew they were competent, but they never felt seen, they never felt heard, and they never felt understood. And that's really kind of the crux of all of this. You want to change your culture around, you want to change your team, stop making your decisions off-site, stop making them through somebody else, show up and see people, hear people, and understand people. And I promise you, your culture is going to change.
John, do I need to change our culture? No. Do I need to bring you breakfast? Yes.
Love it. Breakfast burritos tomorrow.
He could not have answered that more perfectly. That was hilarious. Okay. All right. So seen, heard, understood. Okay. So because everyone likes to kind of like have a 3-part series. So if I'm going to nick a phrase this a little bit more. So step 1 was have the conversation with the leader, but what you didn't do is you didn't run your mouth.
Right.
You said, this is an A-B conversation. You didn't even make yourself the primary point of contact.
Right.
You allowed this person to step in and lead. Right.
Absolutely.
And then because you're the expert in this, you knew what was going to happen.
Right.
If he really did this was going to shift a little bit.
Right.
Okay. Now the apology, before we get to step 3, because I'm sure there's a step 3 somewhere in here, the apology, doing that in public. How was his team receptive to that? And then the second part of that question, the team he was apologizing to, did they get it? Did they hear it? Did they receive it for what it was?
Yeah. So getting to that point, the reason that I wanted him to do it publicly, the reason I didn't want it in an email, the reason I didn't want it through, hey, he came and talked to me, I'm passing this through, is the toxicity of what he and his team had put my team through. This was prior to me ever showing up. Was so huge. When I sat on the floor to learn my team and find out what their process was and find out what they were dealing with, that's where I uncovered. So I am now listening to my team to find out, why are you having such a hard time with customer satisfaction with our sales team? And I would hear these stories that were generated over and over and over again, not just from 1 or 2 people that were, the big crybabies, right? Sometimes I think leaders hear one person and they go, oh, they're just emotional, whatever. But when you hear the recurring themes, if you're a good leader, you're going to wake up and be like, okay, what's going on?
Something's off.
Something's off. Something's not working here. And typically, what I find, Nick, is that when leaders start businesses, and they're writing their core values and they're writing their culture statements and all of those things like that, they're passionate about it. And then all of a sudden they become disassociated with it. They start backing up and they back up and they back up from where they're at. And then they allow what they term as lower level leaders to lead. And then they step out. And then they walk back in and the culture has changed dramatically from what they started from. They don't have their hands on the pulse. So back to the apology, when I told him that that's what he needed to do, I explained it to him to say, listen, I have interviewed every one of my team members, and this is their number one concern. They have felt disrespected by you and your team. And he was shocked by it because all he was trying to do was get his clients to get a mortgage.
Right.
But he didn't know how he was coming across to everybody.
Interesting.
So when he showed up and brought his team was as apologetic as he was because they realized we've stepped over a boundary and these people are not our enemies. That's the biggest thing right there.
Right.
So when he apologized, because this wasn't an overnight thing, it wasn't, hey, I bring you breakfast, and oh, by the way, I'm sorry, which wouldn't have worked.
No, because it's too close
Everybody
together.
would have been like, what was that all about? I
Yeah.
can read right through that. It had been several weeks of seeing changes so that when he apologized, my team was like, wow, we've
that's good.
seen this, but we've seen now humility and a leader that we can get behind and we can support.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting point that you just said. You can, even sincerely, move too fast to apologize.
100%.
I'm apologizing out of guilt. I'm apologizing out of I want to get over this. I want to get past this. You're apologizing for selfish reasons.
For sure. Throughout my career in ministry, as we know each other.
Wait
from
a
that.
second.
I'm
wait
sorry.
a
I'm
second.
going to throw that in.
He brought it up. Brought it up.
And this is the reason, because through my counseling that I would do with people, through how I raise my kids, people that are quick to apologize, I always say, for what? What are you apologizing for? So when I would do marriage counseling, I would say to the husband, you may come in and say, I'm sorry. And in your mind, you're thinking, I'm sorry that I didn't bring you flowers last night. And your wife is sitting there thinking, I just want him to clean the sink up. That's what I want him to apologize about.
Interesting.
So you've got to break that down into whether it's business, it's family, it's children. It doesn't matter what the area is. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And if it's coming through for selfish reasons, 100% of the time, you're going to be seeing that. People will call that out.
They know.
Immediately. We know that that's the case. But my kids would come to me and they would say, Justin did this or Megan did this, and you guys need to apologize. And they would say, I'm sorry. And I would go, for what? And they would look at me like, oh, which one do I list? But that's how I've lived my life. And that's what I do with companies, right? So when I go in, I have to make sure that leadership realizes that their team that they hired, that they had confidence in, are competent. And they're not the enemy. And when I can erase that portion, that toxicity level goes from 100 down to 50, right? It doesn't go all the way away, but it immediately gets to that place where people go, okay, maybe I can work through this. Maybe we can work it together. We can move forward. That's what I love about what I get to do. And I look at my consulting firm, not necessarily as this big job or this big career. I think what I thrive best on is when I can see an organization thrive into a healthy culture again, to where people have what I have called for years Sunday night peace. Now, Sunday night peace for me is I would tell my team, and I told my team at this business that we're just having a horrible time. I said, listen, if you drive to work every day and you cry the entire time, and you come in and you do your work, and then you get back in your car and you cry yourself home all the way to work or all the way home, you need to find another career. I would tell them that all the time. And I would say to them, you have to protect your peace. If you don't have Sunday night peace, which means when I lay my head down at night, I know that this next week, it's going to be a decent week. I'm going to have a better attitude about it. I'm going to change it. We all go to work because we get a paycheck, right? If people aren't paying you.
Is that the only reason why you're here is because I'm paying you?
Listen, but I bet you if you didn't pay him, he ain't showing up every day. He may like you, but that friendship's only going to go a certain way, right? Because
There's a limit to
I'm
it.
sure he's got bills to pay. And I tell people that all the time, right? We go to work because we're going to get a paycheck for it. We should be experts in our field. We should constantly be looking to how we can better the situation, all those kinds of things. But if I'm showing up only for a paycheck, that's going to not last very long.
Nope.
You've got to have that Sunday night peace that when I lay my head down at night, I know I can go on this next week and I can make it work.
Right. I think there's a lot of people get stuck in their own head.
Yeah.
Right. Like that worked because you gave it enough time for it to work.
Right.
Please hear what I'm about to say here. 18 months. This wasn't a 30-day sprint.
Right.
This wasn't hey, you turn the department around in 60 days. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Like this is 18 months. And there's multi reasons for that just from what I can hear. That's a lot of different people. That's a lot of different personalities that have to all shift at their own speed.
Absolutely.
You can't force someone to follow you if they don't want to follow you. And it took time. Like you just said, he brought breakfast and it took weeks before the apology.
Right.
And that was just step 1 and 2. So here we go, right? What was the third step that probably that solidified it?
For them, it was a constant appreciation. It's probably the best way to put it. So that 18 months, tons of work, tons of conversations, a lot of hard conversations. And it wasn't just the salespeople all suck and we got to fix them. Mm-hmm. I had a team that had bad attitudes. 100%. I didn't put that off on everybody else. Like, oh, okay, if they have a bad attitude only because of you, right?
Right.
Everybody had work to do. But in that process, I created appreciation avenues for our sales team and for our team members.
What does that mean? For people that are not in your world, what does that mean? What is an appreciation avenue?
Simply something as easy as write a little thank you note, give it to me, I'll pass it off to all the sales team. Send a quick email to somebody. Just let them know you're thinking about them. Show up. I had my team actually go to the sales offices to shadow them for half a day to see what their life was like. That because what you're doing here, this is what you're affecting. That's what I think most people forget. I do my job A to Z every day, but what impact am I making?
Right.
So it had to be a lasting impact, right? So it had to be, I go back a couple of years ago when I was relaunching the RQ group and you were helping me do all that stuff. If all you thought about was, I got to get him a website, I got to get him advertisement, I got to get all this stuff, that would have been accomplished. It's what's his life like now because of the value that I brought to the table.
Correct.
So not only do you have to see that as what value you're bringing to the table, but what is somebody else giving to you, right? And in this process, as I ended that 18-month period, I told you we had about 30 employees. Corporate started watching, right? Productivity is going through the roof. Retention is going through the roof. Within that 18 months, I had 120 employees. We quadrupled our staff. We were the number one producing site for all of this organization. And it simply had to do with, we knew what we started just this well-oiled machine, and we were locking arms with salespeople. I mean, our salespeople, they didn't have to wait for me any longer to say, hey, come in. They would just show up to our fulfillment center, and they'd be like, hey, just wanted to celebrate you guys today. Just brought in ice cream for you guys today. And it's not all about food. You get what I'm saying.
But food helps.
Yeah, food helps.
Food helps. Yes.
But the whole point of it was they were being appreciative of what was happening. And our team was like, I just made somebody's house dream come true by closing their loan quick. So you got to find the value. And when we as leaders stop seeing value in our team members, you'll lose every one of them.
That's good.
So that's kind of where I come from.
Okay. All right. So yeah, basically if your team sucks, call him.
I am here to help those teams. That is my passion.
Got it. I love that. I love that. But you know, it's funny because you always hear about that from a operations side. And I think your angle on it allows that operator to stay where they are, right? And now you're able to come in next to them, where with a lot of operators, I don't know if another word to use, with a lot of operators that I meet, they always seem to feel threatened with another operator coming in, right? Oh, well, you know, you're changing the culture, but are you after my job?
Right.
With this, hey, no, operator stays in place. What we're going to do is we're going to shift the way our HR operates and bring a new healthy culture into this, so that way operations can succeed even better. I see this. Now, please hear with what I'm about to say next. I see this as a very different method to solving the critical human negative mindset.
Absolutely. Well, and here, like every other business, this is what I tell all of my clients, my prospective clients, referrals that come to me. My job is going to be so much easier, and it's going to cost you less when you are proactive and we are adding value. We're changing that culture. We're helping the communication, rather than you have a crisis that comes in and now I have to solve something in 24, 48 hours, 72 hours. The cost is going to be so much bigger, right? So now I have had to put everybody else on the side and now just focus in on you. I have one client right now that I've been working with a couple of years. I completely did all of their framework for them, employee handbooks, their 1099 contracts, all of their intellectual property, their non-competes, their non-solicitations, all those things. That, you know, it's kind of one of the things that I do for people is I can do that framework. I offered her a retention where I would work with her for 6 months, 12 months. And she's at the time, well, I'm not really sure, you know. And since that time, she's had 3 different crises. And I have jumped in to help her. Her most recent one, she sent me a message here about 3 weeks ago, and she just said, man, I think I'm in over my head. I explained to her this, you are, because you should not have done A, B, and C, which I had already advised her with. She didn't want to bring me in because she thought it would cost too much money and take too much time. She wanted an overnight Band-Aid fix. You can't do that with human resources.
No, you can't.
I mean, if you are not compliant with your 1099 contractors, that can't be fixed overnight. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen that I could set you up prior to doing all the pre-stuff and working with your team to help that culture be what it needs to be. That's what I am really passionate about. I can be reactive and I can help crisis mode, but it's so much more fulfilling to me when I can get in and I hold hands with the leadership and I hold hands with the team members and we find active, healthy solutions where people enjoy what they're doing and enjoy the place where they're going to be at.
Love it. Man. Got so many things to think about right now. So you also have 2 books that you brought with us. Can you go and hold them up and just give us a little example of? So I think the first ones, what the stories you told about were more aligned with this book here, right?
Well, the first book I wrote is called Navigating the High Seas of Your Workplace. It's an HR playbook, and so I created the top 20 issues that most businesses, whether you are for-profit, not-for-profit, if you are a massive corporation, if you're a small to medium-sized, 20 topics that that you have to face. I wrote it as an avenue through a pirate ship. So your business is the pirate ship, and all your deckhands are your employees, and how do they work through it? And every chapter has some thoughts to ponder for you to talk with your team, and it also has an activity, right? So it's really a workbook, a playbook that you can actually do. I wrote this about 1.5 years ago because as I was going out speaking to corporations, I'm like, hey, I want to have something for you. So that was my very first book. It never really intended it for it to be an author. That was never kind of my gig that I was doing. And then I just released Each Day is a Gift. This is my newest book. And this has turned into just a huge labor of love. It's 31 days, 31 gifts. So what this is I was going through a time in my life where it seemed like everything was going wrong. I don't know if you know, I'm not just talking about work. I'm talking about relationships, financially, just everything that you can think of. And literally day after day. And I am not a negative person, and I'm not looking for every, devil around every corner.
Sure.
That's not who I am. But every day I would get up and felt like I just had another punch in the gut. I'm just like, oh, okay. Why is this happening? Why is this going through? So, every year for the last several years, during the month of November, I would write some type of a social media post that would just talk about our blessings, thankfulness and gratefulness. And truly, I was in an imposter syndrome while I was even doing that through Thanksgiving, because I think I was writing it to encourage myself. I was doing what David wrote in the Bible about encouraging yourself in the Lord.
Isn't it funny how sometimes the content we create for others is really for ourselves to remind ourselves of what we're going through?
And so mid-November, I had a day. I'll just leave it at that.
A day. I like it.
I came back from lunch and thought, I can't. I just can't. I can't, whatever, ... Can't go back in here. I can't go talk. I can't go home. It just had one of those days. And I had been working with a coach who had, was encouraging me, and he had said, listen, only you can change your circumstances and you can change your environment. And you just have to stop being a whiny little, and then he had an expletive.
There we go.
Right. And I remember sitting in my truck, waiting to go back in from lunch. And the thought hit me, Rod, it's time for you to stop being a whiny. And I left it at that. And I went back into my office, and all of a sudden this idea hit me. Everything that you're walking through, why don't you make it a gift? Why don't you turn it around? Why don't you have a gift of gratefulness that is going to get you through whatever this situation is?
Sure.
Why don't you have a gift of peace? where you are no longer worried about losing your peace, but you're going to give that. And it turned into hey, I'll do a social media post every day in December and give a gift away, whether it's a gift to me, a gift to my family, a gift to my friends, whoever it was. And so I would write this post. I attached a song to it that really kind of, lyrics and music has always been a thing in my life. And I'd be writing something and a lyric would pop into my head and I'd be like, oh, that's good there. I'm going to put that in there. And I started posting it on my social media platforms. So this started December 1 of 2025. We were about 15 days in and a friend of mine called me and said, you really need to turn this into a book.
Nice.
And I said, why? And they said, well, there's evidently a story behind each one of these gifts. And I thought, well, there is. And so about 10 days later, right around Christmas time, I thought, okay, I'm going to turn this into a book. And I started going to a coffee shop in McKinney. That's where I write. That's where I feel the most peace. And it's weird. It's weird to be there because you know how coffee shops are. They're loud, they're clanky, everybody's having conversations. But I was anonymous, and I could sit there with my laptop and just write. And within a week, I wrote the book.
Nice.
I went back to each one of the posts, and I literally wrote the story. So when I was talking about the gift of gratitude, the first chapter is all about what I had been going through for about 14 months. And I had some people say, well, is this a tell-all? You're going to expose it. No, it has nothing to do with that. It was a cathartic experience for me to say, this is what I was walking through, and this is how I changed it around to be a gift of gratitude.
Nice.
There's a chapter in here on forgiveness, the gift of forgiveness. And I tell a very personal story about a family member without naming names, without talking about any of that, but just to say, I had to get to a place where I was no longer bitter. I was no longer angry. I had forgiven this person, but I also put boundaries up.
Sure.
So I wrote each one of the chapters to explain what that gift was about and where it kind of moved in my life. And set it out to have it published in mid-January and did a big marketing campaign, wanted to sell 100 books. That was my goal. I have had people from grade school through high school, through college, all the way through any career I had ever been at that messaged me and bought the book.
Nice.
And what I have found is this has turned into a gift of hope because people would see me and I hate to say this like this because it kind of sounds egotistical and I don't mean it that way, but my jobs have always had me kind of at a level where people would look at me and be like, oh gosh, I want to be like him. And my wife would be like, just come live with us. You don't really. Nothing like Nancy leveling me out, and making me my feet on the ground. But when I told the stories, people were like, I identify with this. I have a friend whose daughter had been sexually abused during her high school years. And they were just going through this. And she's reading some of my chapters and she's calling me up crying. And she's like, you have no idea how much hope this just gave me. If you can walk through that, I can walk through this. This week, I had a man who his wife worked for me, probably 25 years ago, maybe. She just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And he said, I got your book. She's laying next to me in the bed. I'm reading this and I'm sobbing. And I'm asking you, will you pray for our family? Because you've walked through some of this stuff and now I want to be able to give hope back to her. So that's the stories for me.
There you go.
It's not about, hey, I want this big thing and I want to be the best-selling author. That has nothing to do with it. But each day is a gift. Truly becomes a mindset that it doesn't matter what you're going through. Now, here's the thing, Nick, and then I'll stop on this. This is a journey of about 14 to 16 months. And 90% of what I was walking through hasn't changed.
Interesting.
My mindset has changed.
Okay.
I am totally grateful for where I'm at. I'm totally in a place of peace where I'm like, okay, if I could have fixed all of my issues, I would have already done it, right? If we had the solution, we would fix it. We would change whatever the environment is. But I did have a mentor that used to say to me, you can only fix what you can only fix. And that is your attitude and your mindset.
That's good.
So every morning when I get up and I have that moment of, can I do this? Yeah, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Is things going wrong? Yeah, there are things going wrong. But you know what? If I start my day off with gratitude, all of that other stuff seems to go away. Now, here's where my biggest failure, if I could use that, comes into, is I will run. I'm out the door before 7 o'clock. I'm networking. I'm talking with clients. I'm doing all this stuff. And I feel so validated and feel so great by the end of the day. I lay my head down and I am exhausted, but it's that good exhaustion. You know, like, oh, I accomplished something today. And then my mind starts to work. You don't think you're not that great. Oh, you're an imposter. And I immediately have to do what the scriptures say about taking every thought captive.
Interesting.
Because if I don't, you're not coming to my house to take those thoughts captive. Because you don't even know that they're happening.
It's in your own head.
And that's where this has come in, because I have referenced chapters and chapters of this about being present in people's lives, having gratitude, having hope, having courage. One of my favorite chapters in here is the gift of kindness. I tell people all the time, kindness costs you nothing. Literally, you don't have to look like me. You don't have to believe like me. You don't have to have the same clothes I have. You don't have to live in the same neighborhood I have. You don't have to have the same skin color I have. Just be kind.
Right.
You know, and people forget that because we get so caught up. That's why I wrote the book, is to give that gift to everybody that I could, that says, if he's walked through this, I can do it too.
That's good. Man, thank you, Rod, for coming and joining me on the show. This was an absolute blast. We went from HR to understanding mindset and having each day be a gift.
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm assuming that these books are both on Amazon, correct?
Both of these are on Amazon.
So what we'll do is we'll make sure to put those links in the descriptions. That way you guys can go order these books. Thank you again for joining me on your show. Thank you guys for joining us on the show. We hope y'all have a great day.